and welcome. You're listening to the Sickle Cell Action Network, an internet radio show presented by Martin Center Sickle Cell Initiative and sponsored by Mass Therapeutics. We're coming to you live from Indianapolis, Indiana, and we're here to serve you by providing up-to-date information and opinion on all matters pertaining to sickle cell disease. My name is Gary A. Gibson, and I am your host for the next 2 hours. Let me start by saying that I don't have sickle cell disease, nor do I carry the sickle cell trait. In spite of that, I am no stranger to sickle cell. Quite the contrary. You see, even though I don't have sickle cell, it has had a very huge impact on my life. That's true because its complications took my wife from me after 12 years of marriage. It also caused her to have a miscarriage that resulted in the loss of our twin babies that she was carrying while in a sickle cell crisis. So all told, sickle cell has taken 3 lives from me, and I feel the pain of those losses every single day. I currently serve as the president and CEO of Martin Center Sickle Cell Initiative, a community-based organization that has been helping people with sickle cell for over 45 years. Each day I attempt to transform the pain of my losses into positive energy that is focused on making a difference for those who are battling sickle cell. From being involved with sickle cell for over 40 years, I'm able to say that much progress has been made, but there is still so much work to do. This show is an opportunity to contribute to the ever-expanding dialogue about sickle cell that is taking place all around the world. Our show is about raising awareness, but it is also about so much more. I like to say that sickle cell awareness is important, but we need more than awareness. Those living with sickle cell are already aware. That makes me ask, so what are we doing for them? My answer is, not enough. That's why we've named this show the Sickle Cell Action Network, because awareness without action has very little impact. We want this show to be a source of information and a call to action to help those who must live with sickle cell in their midst. We have designed this show to provide information that is beneficial to patients, caregivers, family members, and friends alike. Most importantly, we want people with sickle cell to know and understand that they are not alone. The Sickle Cell Action Network show features live guests who are healthcare providers, patients, advocates, and others who are engaged in the fight to eradicate sickle cell and ease its burden on those it affects. Today, we're going to be sharing some of the highlights of the 44th Annual Sickle Cell Disease Association of America convention that just took place in Baltimore, Maryland. We will first speak, if we have any luck, with Sickle Cell Disease Association's CEO, Sanja Banks, to get her take on how the convention went. Then I will share some of the topics that were presented at the conference. We'll also be speaking with Joe Robinson Jr. of the South Central Pennsylvania Sickle Cell Council and Rosemary Britts of the Sickle Cell Association in St. Louis. We'll get their impressions of the convention and talk to them about some of the things that are going on in their respective areas. We are serious about sharing valuable information, and we hope that you will join us as every time that we have a show, which is going to be we're going to go bi-weekly from here on, and I'll give you more information on that lately, or in a few minutes I'll talk about that. And if you've missed some of our previous editions or wish that you could listen to them again, don't worry. Just go to the Martin Center Sickle Cell Initiative YouTube page and you will find them there. Now let's get on with our show, and we'll start with this week's edition of Sickle Cell News Update. In our Sickle Cell News Update today, we have several things to report. One is really not so good news. In fact, it's not good news at all. And that is that our sponsor, Mass Therapeutics, has reported the top-line results from the Phase 3 study in sickle cell disease. And the results aren't so good. And so, therefore, I'm going to share this with you, and you'll know what I'm talking about. This came to us from San Diego on September 20th, and it says Mass Therapeutics recently reported top-line results from EPIC, a Phase 3 clinical study of its investigational new drug, also known as MST-188, for the treatment of individuals with sickle cell disease experiencing vaso-occlusive crisis. The study did not meet its primary efficacy endpoint of demonstrating a statistically significant reduction in the mean duration of vaso-occlusive crisis, and that therefore it wasn't successful because that was their goal, to show a significant reduction in the mean duration of a sickle cell crisis. There were no statistically significant differences between treatment groups in the intent to treat population across the 2 secondary efficacy endpoints, rate of rehospitalization for vaso-occlusive crisis and the occurrence of adult chest syndrome. Consistent with previously conducted studies, MST-188 was generally well tolerated with no statistically significant differences in treatment-related serious adverse events in the group compared to the placebo group. No deaths occurred on the study. We are exceedingly disappointed with these top-line results. While clearly not the outcome we wanted, we believe the insights and data from the largest placebo-controlled clinical trial ever completed in sickle cell disease will substantially advance the understanding of vaso-occlusive crisis and the still maturing clinical science necessary to support the development of new therapeutics for this debilitating disease, stated Brian M. Culley, the company's chief executive officer. We wish to reiterate our sincere appreciation for all of the patients, caregivers, and others who aided us in conducting this informative study, Mr. Culley said. These analyses are limited to just top-line data, so in the coming weeks the company intends to review the full data set from EPIC. In addition, we plan to perform an interim analysis of the ongoing heart failure trial of Vepiloxamer. However, based on the data we've seen to date, we expect we will terminate all clinical development of Vepiloxamer. Consequently, while we evaluate our options, we intend to significantly and immediately reduce our operating expenses and continue our efforts with AIR-001, our lead asset in heart failure, with preserved ejection fraction, which currently is the subject of a 100-patient Phase 2 study expected to complete enrollment by the end of 2017, continued Mr. Culley. The EPIC study was a randomized, double-blind, two-arm, placebo-controlled Phase 3 clinical trial of Vepiloxamer, or MST-188, in individuals with sickle cell disease hospitalized for acute pain typical of vaso-occlusive crisis who required treatment with parenteral opioid analgesia. The primary objective of the study was to evaluate the efficacy of Vepiloxamer in reducing the duration of vaso-occlusive crisis, with the duration of crisis measured from the time of randomization to the time at which the patient received the last dose of opioid analgesia for the treatment of vaso-occlusive crisis prior to hospital discharge. A total of 388 patients ages 4 to 46 were randomized in EPIC. More than 75 study sites in 14 countries participated. The average age was 15 years. Patients under age 18 accounted for approximately 71% of total subjects. Approximately 61% of patients were concurrently on hydroxyurea therapy. So that is bad news for a number of reasons. Number one, the drug wasn't able to prove that it works, which is a loss to the sickle cell community. But I think most importantly, Mass Therapeutics has demonstrated a definite passion for helping people with sickle cell disease. They went over and above in some of the things that they did, including the development and release of an app for smartphones called Voice Crisis Alert, and Voice Crisis Alert was distributed free to the sickle cell community. It's still available, and Mass did that. They didn't have to do that, but they did that on their own volition because they're committed to trying to make a difference in the sickle cell space. So with the failure of MST-188 in the trial, it basically means currently that Mass Therapeutics will no longer be involved in our sickle cell community, and I think that that will be a big loss. The next story that I want to share with you is that sickle cell disease afflicts tribal families in the Nilgiris. And the way it reads is this. In a remote tribal settlement near Coonoor, where around only 20 tribal families reside, a family of 4, including 2 children, were found to be afflicted with sickle cell anemia. Fortuitously, the condition was detected during a special medical camp conducted by the District Revenue Office and the Nilgiri Adivasi Welfare Association. The family now has a fighting chance to lead productive lives. Now, Nilgiri is in the Nilgiri Mountains in India. Sickle cell disease, which results in an abnormality in the oxygen-carrying protein hemoglobin, is a serious public health issue across the world and is often found among indigenous communities due to the members of these communities residing in areas who are prone to malaria in the past, says Dr. Nandakumar Menon, head of the Sickle Cell Center at Association for Health Welfare in the Nilgiris. According to him, 17,000 people who were the original inhabitants of the Nilgiris have been screened for the disease, and screening continues. Sickle cell disease occurs in around 1% of the population, and more than 12% are carriers who show no signs, he said. Doctors working with tribal communities state that in certain pockets, more than 20% of the population are carriers. In Gudalar and Pandalar, more than 300 patients are undergoing treatment for the illness, while 47 patients are receiving treatment in Kotagiri, Kunar, and Masunagudi. It is not just Irilar and Kurumbar tribes that are afflicted with this disease, but also other early non-tribal settlers to the Nilgiris, said Mr. Menon. One reason why the sickness is so prominent among the indigenous people and early settlers could be because malaria was once endemic in the region, he added. Statistics from NAWA show that of the more than 3,400 tribal residents screened in 98 tribal villages, the highest concentration of the illness and also the sickle cell trait is with the Paniya tribes, with 2.13% of those screened having the illness. Revenue Divisional Officer of Kunar told the Hindu, which is the source of this information, a publication, an online publication, he told the Hindu that people identified as having sickle cell disease get a fixed stipend, similar to a disability pension, amounting to 1,000 rupees each month. At today's exchange rate, 1 rupee is equal to 15 United States cents. So that means that the government is giving them a stipend of about $150 a month. The Revenue Office, along with the local health department and NAWA, work together to screen isolated communities for the disease by setting up border area camps. We also work to ensure that there is sufficient economic upliftment that goes together with healthcare facilities offered to these communities by NAWA and the health department. The average lifespan of a tribal with sickle cell disease is just over 40 years. This can be improved with better nutrition and access to access to medical care, said Secretary of NAWA, Mr. M. Alwas. Sorry for that. It's a little difficult to pronounce some of those Indian names, but again, it's sickle cell is prevalent in India, and they are trying to address it. And our last story today is that St. Jude Methodists team up to enhance care for adults with sickle cell disease, and this comes to us from the Commercial Appeal. And the article reads this way. At 6 years of age, Trey Thompson gets first-rate treatment for his sickle cell disease at St. Children's Research Hospital, where the Richland elementary first grader has even learned to administer some of his own medication. It's a blessing we're here, said Ty Thompson, his dad. But while younger sickle cell patients have traditionally done well because of close monitoring and regular treatment, adults with the disease often fare poorly, suffering higher rates of complication and mortality. The problems largely result from patients not maintaining the same level of care and treatment after they emerge from their teens. This past week, however, St. Jude, Methodist Healthcare, and other centers unveiled a pair of initiatives intended to ensure a smooth transition to adult care for people with sickle cell. The two hospitals announced an agreement to advance research and clinical care for adults with the disease. The partnership coincides with the expansion of the Methodist Comprehensive Sickle Cell Center at Methodist University Hospital. Also, St. Jude announced it has been awarded a 6-year, $4.4 million grant from the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, part of the National Institutes of Health, to improve the use of prescription medication by sickle cell patients. Under the initiative, a team from St. Jude, the University of Memphis, Methodist University Hospital, Baptist Memorial Hospital, Vanderbilt University, and the Sickle Cell Foundation of Tennessee will develop mobile health applications to help patients manage their use of hydroxyurea, a critical medication that helps prevent the formation of sickle-shaped red blood cells. The disease afflicts more than 100,000 people nationwide, including about 2,000 people in an area of the Mid-South encompassing parts of Tennessee, Mississippi, Arkansas, Kentucky, and Missouri. St. Jude, a regional referral center for pediatric treatments, is treating about 900 kids with sickle cell and sees about 40 to 50 new cases per year, said Dr. Jane Hankins, associate member of the hospital's Department of Hematology. The initiatives should improve care for adult sickle cell patients and make care accessible to more patients in the region, Hankins said. The partnership between St. Jude and Methodist allows for sharing human resources such as social workers, nurse practitioners, and other caregivers to ensure parents continue to get good care after reaching adulthood. What we need is a continuation of high-quality, multidisciplinary care as they become adults, Hankins said. We're trying to reproduce the pediatric model at Methodist. And so thanks to St. Jude and Methodist for teaming up to deal with something that is an extremely important matter, and that is to broaden the availability of sickle cell care for adults in this country. And finally, I'd like to point out that one of the certainties of life is that things are always going to change, and so it is with the Sickle Cell Action Network Internet Radio Show. We're pleased to announce that we have acquired a new sponsor, Prolong Pharmaceuticals. Prolong is developing a new drug for sickle cell. The drug is called Sanguinate. Sanguinate is a biological therapeutic that acts both as a carbon monoxide releasing molecule and as an oxygen transfer agent. It is designed to provide a low-level therapeutic release of carbon monoxide that inhibits vasoconstriction and reduces inflammation, and then transport oxygen to hypoxic cells and tissues. Prolong is preparing to start a Phase 2 clinical trial with Sanguinate, and we are delighted that they have agreed to support our efforts to keep the sickle cell community informed. We're also announcing that we will be moving to a bi-weekly format starting October 18th. This change is necessary because we have learned that the demands of producing and airing this show on a weekly basis is just a bit much for our current capacity to do so. We'll continue to alert everyone to our show dates via social media, and we hope that you, our audience, will be able to continue tuning in every other Tuesday starting October 18th. This is the Sickle Cell Action Network Internet Radio Show. I'm Gary A. Gibson, your host. We'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll start talking about last week's Sickle Cell Disease Association of America annual convention. Welcome back to the Sickle Cell Action Network. This is Gary A. Gibson, your host, and I want to tell you just how thrilled I am with the way people came together last week in Baltimore, Maryland for the Sickle Cell Disease Association of America conference. I had hoped to be able to get the CEO, Ms. Sanja Banks, on today, but there's some kind of difficulty. She said she would be available, but I can't seem to get a hold of her now. But I will go through some of what we did, some of the stuff that took place there, and it was tremendous. First of all, there were over 400 people that were in attendance from all over the country, and in fact from outside of the country as well. It was a total blend of people who were practitioners as well as community-based organization representatives, as well as a sickle cell client and patients. It was a tremendous group, and it was great to be a part of that. There were over 80 different sessions over a 4-day period. Not all at once. I mean, some of them were happening concurrently, so you had to pick and choose which ones you wanted to go to, but what was presented is phenomenal in that there were around 80 or so different sessions that people could participate in. And these were sessions that included the medical aspects of sickle cell, the psychosocial aspects of sickle cell, the organizing and advocacy aspects of sickle cell, the community-based organization aspects of sickle cell, all of this happening concurrently in Baltimore last week. So among some of the presenters that were there, just let me tell you the kinds of people that were represented. There were people there from participating presenters from Boston University, Charles R. Drew University of Medicine and Science, the Public Health Institute, University of Illinois Chicago, Emory University. They had several people there. Global Blood Therapeutics, another emerging and promising company working on another promising therapeutic for sickle cell. The Michigan Public Health Institute, Johns Hopkins University was there. The Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, Yale New Haven Hospital was there. The University of Connecticut Health Center, Florida A&M University, University of California, San Francisco Benioff Children's Hospital in Oakland, the Levine Cancer Institute, Virginia Commonwealth University, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Minnesota Department of Health, and Howard University, Be the Match, St. Children's Jude Research Hospital, California Department of Public Health. Each of these organizations had representatives who were in attendance and who gave different types of presentations during the 4 days of the conference. Some of the topics that were covered, like I said, it was pretty broad-reaching, and let me just kind of go over so you'll know some of the topics that were covered. One is care coordination, empowering families. That was presented by Talana Hughes and Gina Gembel. Talana is from Chicago and Gina Gembel is from the University of Michigan. Another topic was sickle cell disease, young adult transition. And that was presented by Dr. Bari Andamariam, who was just announced as the new Chief Medical Officer for the Sickle Cell Disease Association of America. She is replacing the outgoing Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Kim Smith-Whitley. Looking for good things from Dr. Andamariam. Also, there was a session on priapism, Call to Treatment, it was titled. There's a session on pregnancy and fertility preservation. Another session on bone marrow transplant and gene therapy. Another chronic transfusion and hydroxyurea was another topic that was presented by Dr. Kim Smith-Whitley. Nursing perspectives, challenges with care is another session. The Patient Bill of Rights was the Charles F. Whitten Memorial Lecture, which is one of the top billed lectures of the conference, and the presenter was Dr. Michael DeBond. Some of you may have heard of him. He has made quite a name for himself in the sickle cell world in terms of sickle cell research and care. So he gave that particular session called the Patient Bill of Rights, in which he outlined 10 rights that he felt that all sickle cell patients should have. Hopefully he will make that available to the public because there's good stuff in that. There was another session called Self-Nurturance, a Holistic Approach, and that was presented by Dr. Lisa Whitten. Another interesting session was called Advancing Sickle Cell Care, Education, and Awareness in Hispanic Communities. Another interesting one was Creation of the Emergency Department Sickle Cell Care Collaborative. That was presented by Dr. Patricia Kavanaugh. Also, there was a session on discontinuation of folic acid supplementation in young patients with sickle cell anemia. Another session was called Understanding Health Professionals' Needs in Providing Care for Individuals with Sickle Cell Disease. Yet another session was called The Effects of Music Therapy on Transition Outcomes in Young Adult Patients with Sickle Cell Disease. Then there was Emergent Therapies for Sickle Cell Pain, Cannabis Use as a New Therapy, Opioid Use as an Old Therapy. These are things that are of quite importance these days, and so it was very good that those topics were presented. Then another one was Pregnancy Outcomes for California Women with Sickle Cell Disease, regarding a study in that manner. Improving Educational Outcomes for Students with Sickle Cell Disease, presented by Dr. Christopher Harden. And then Patient and Caregiver Decision-Making and Experience of Bone Marrow Transplant in Sickle Cell Disease, and on and on and on. It was a tremendous conference with all of these great topics presented by very highly qualified people. Not only were the people qualified, they're passionate about what they're doing, and so are we. And so it's great to be amongst so many people that are passionate about trying to make a difference with sickle cell. Another thing, though, that happened that continues to actually disturb me a little bit is that it reminded me of the difficulty that people with sickle cell disease face. I witnessed at least 3 different sickle cell patients that were in attendance go into sickle cell crisis during the event. So these people come to the event, they look forward to it, and they get there and then they get sick. And no one should have to deal with life like that. You should be able to, like most of the people that were there, you should be able to plan on going and not have to worry about whether or not you're going to get sick and end up in the hospital. I saw 2 people that actually were taken away in ambulances. One was at 5 o'clock in the morning, and the only reason I saw that is because there was a fire alarm in our hotel at 5 o'clock in the morning, and everybody had to get up and go out, and that was a little bit much for one of the sickle cell patients, and they went into crisis and were taken away in an ambulance. That is the reality of living with sickle cell. There's a lot of good going on, but there is still the reality of dealing with sickle cell. So that's where we stand right now. That is a brief overview of what took place in Baltimore last week. We're going to take a break, and then when we come back, we'll continue the discussion, and very soon we will get Mr. Joe Robinson Jr. from the South Central PA Sickle Cell Council on the line, and we'll speak with him. This is the Sickle Cell Action Network Internet Radio Show, and I'm Gary A. Gibson, your host. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce you to a tremendous individual that I spent some time with when I was in Baltimore at the Sickle Cell Disease Association of America. His name is Joe Robinson Jr., and Joe is the Executive Director at the South Central Pennsylvania Sickle Cell Council. I'm really glad that Joe is here with us on the show. So, Joe, hello, and welcome to the Sickle Cell Action Network Internet Radio Show.
Hey, Gary, thank you so much for having me on, man, and kudos to you for providing this vehicle for getting the word out about sickle cell disease. Mega kudos, brother.
Well, thank you so much. It's all about trying to make a difference and trying to help people with sickle cell, and I'm glad that you are in this battle with me, and there's so many other people that we were hanging out with last week, all working for the same cause. Joe, let's take a quick minute, if you will, and tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from originally, and how long have you been serving in your current role?
Okay, all right, well, I appreciate that. I hope you don't mind me taking a long sweep.
Go right ahead.
I'll try to make it as engaging as possible for your listening audience, but I was born in Charlotte, North Carolina, and at the age of 7, we moved to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, back in 1964. We were part of that, we were at the tail end of what was called the Great Migration.
Right.
From the south to the north.
Right.
So we were a part of that migration coming to the north to look for better opportunities. So we made our home here in Pennsylvania with my parents, and so I was raised here and went away to school and came back and have invested in this community. Worked for 26 years for state government, and that was a very rewarding career. In fact, you and I talked about our shared background.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
That's right. You were at Indiana DOT, and I was at Pennsylvania DOT, and so it was a rewarding career. And after about 26 years, I decided to do something different. So I resigned and wrote a book on leadership, and then got involved in some community work. And before I knew it, one of my fraternity brothers, who was the founder of the South Central Pennsylvania Sickle Cell Council, the late Dr. Donald W. Spigner, asked me to come aboard when they were separated from their executive director. He asked me to come aboard and consider taking the helm for about a year until we get things stabilized. And so 7 years later, I'm still here.
Okay. So where exactly are you? I know, but I want you to tell the audience.
Sure. We're located, in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, the state capital.
Okay. Okay. And has it always been located there?
Yes. The council has always been right here in Harrisburg, formed in 1994, right here in Harrisburg. Dr. Spigner and several of his other black physicians, male and female, got together and decided to form this organization after one of the young teenage patients in this community died of post-surgery complications because the physicians didn't know enough about sickle cell.
Wow.
And so she survived her surgery, but then died in post-op. And so they said, we've got to do something about it. And so that's what caused them to meet with the Secretary of Health then and launch this whole venture that we're currently been involved in now for 21 years.
Okay, so 21 years.
21 years, that's...
How many clients or members do you serve there?
We serve about 120 clients here in the South Central Pennsylvania area that we actually touch in terms of having case files that we manage.
Okay.
But there's probably at least 3 or 4 times that many in our area that we've not touched, but we know they're out there because we hear we look at some of the Department of Health statistics on school-age children with sickle cell disease. And so we know they're out there, but it's just difficult getting them. As you know, Gary, this is a disease that comes with it a stigma, and we call it the forgotten disease. And a lot of times our clients just don't want to self-disclose. And so we're here fighting the good fight, continuing to let them know that this is a safe harbor. And they're welcome to bring their ship at the harbor and to port at any time, because we're here for them.
I like how you said that. You know, we encounter the same thing here in Indianapolis as well, where we have probably twice as many people that are supposed to have sickle cell, according to the Department of Health, than those that we know about. So, you know, we're touching about 300 families every year, but they tell us there's maybe 600 at least in our area, and we're still trying to find them. So I understand exactly what you're talking about. Joe, what about the demographics of your client population? Do any sickle cell patients that you have that aren't of African American heritage or African heritage? Do you have?
We have those as well. About 25% of our clientele are Latino.
Really? 25? That's pretty high.
5%. Yeah, I know. It is. We have a high percentage of Latinos, African American, and we have and Africans as well.
Okay. And then what about the ages? Pretty much all ages, or what?
We have obviously, like you said, all ages, the pediatrics as well as the adults. I'd say half of our clients are children, though.
Okay, about half.
And the rest are adults.
What is the oldest age of the clients, if you know?
Well, we just lost our oldest client, who was Linda Ellen, 80. I think she was 81 years old.
Awesome.
Yes, we just lost her this year. So, yeah, how about
that is something. So, you know, one of the things that we struggle with, and I'm sure you do too, is funding, Joe.
Yeah.
And I think most people that we serve, they don't really understand how difficult it is for us to get funding. What are your thoughts about the challenges that organizations like ours face when it comes to finding support for our efforts?
Well, the challenge is because it's such a rare disease. When you look at the total universe of diseases out there, even though there are more people obviously with sickle cell disease in continents outside of North America. 300,000 are born every year in Africa, in the continent of Africa.
Right. Right.
But when you look at the preponderance of cancer and the many various strains and forms of cancer across this nation, cancer tends to dominate the airways. And so it's difficult when you have a rare disease to get the traction and the attention and the funding that's necessary. And, we try to be as vocal as we possibly can, but I do know that these funders obviously look at where they're going to get the most return on their dollar. Now, we believe our clients have as much a right to the pursuit as anyone else, and that's why you and I and others are fighting the good fight on their behalf. But the reality is that we are fighting the big C.
Yeah, we are. Absolutely. So, do you think it's become any more difficult or less difficult since the time you started as far as finding funding? Is it harder than it used to be?
Well, actually, I have to be honest and say that I've been doing this 7 years, and so I'm finally getting a good handle on what I'm doing. This is a whole new arena for me. I was in state government.
Right.
Never private sector. I never had to generate revenue.
Right.
Now this is a feast or famine. If you don't fish and hunt, you don't eat.
Right.
So this is a new paradigm for me, but it's taken me that long to get a little bit proficient at it, and so I've seen my revenue go up a little bit only because I've gotten better at identifying sources, not necessarily because there's more funding at the state or federal level. Just that I've done a better job at making myself known among our philanthropic community.
Okay, and that makes sense. So who are some of your funders, if you can say?
Yeah, sure. Well, obviously, Pennsylvania Department of Health
Okay.
And then we had some area hospitals. One of our largest hospitals in this area, the Pinnacle Health System, is a primary sponsor for us as well.
Okay.
And as well as the Capital Blue Cross and the Highmark Blue Shield, they also support us.
Okay.
So we've been fortunate in that regard. And then there's a lot of private entities who try to nominally support us throughout the year for different events. But the predictable funding, and I say that loosely, is our state government funding. And I say it loosely because, over the last 9 years, across this state, we've seen that funding decrease by $1.7 million over the last 9 years.
Wow.
So, and that's for the entire state. So that's me, the other non-profits and community-based organizations in Pennsylvania that are focused on this disease. So that includes the Philadelphia and the Pittsburgh offices. All of us in our area hospitals, all of us collectively lost over $1.7 million from the state grant over the last 9 years. And so we're endeavoring to get them to at least try and replace half of that. But that jury is still out on that.
All right. Well, let's change the subject here, Joe, if you can. You were at last week's Sickle Cell Disease Association of America convention in Baltimore, and so what are your impressions about the conference?
Well, I tell you, I thought the conference it was one of the better conferences I've been attending for at least 6 years here now, and I thought this year, I thought the sessions were right on point. I thought the overall conference design and then even just the way that I felt that they attended to the CBOs. I thought that our national office did a good job at creating a welcoming environment for the CBOs and all of our clients who attend this conference. So I thought they did a good job, and I shared as much with our Executive Director Sonia Banks.
I agree. It did seem like they were going overboard, really trying to ensure that everybody had what they needed, and that was a good sign. So if you could pick 3 things about the conference that stood out to you the most, what would they be?
Well, that's an interesting question. Again, I thought that we were all, I think there was some information brought out about new research opportunities out there that I found that to be interesting. There's this national patient network that I wasn't aware that's formed, and I think that is very instrumental and can be helpful. So I was pleased to hear some of that. I also was pleased to hear that our national initiative to try and develop a patient registry has gained some traction.
Yeah.
And so there are over 3,100 people in this patient registry who we can now reach out and touch and put our hands on and say with confidence that these people have been diagnosed with sickle cell disease and are living with it. Heretofore, as you well know, there has never been a universal patient registry that we can actually put our hands on people nationwide and say that we have X number of people with the disease. We know that there are about 100,000 people out there, so there's much work to be done to fully populate this site, but it's a good start, and so I was encouraged by that.
Yeah, me too. I mean, this is all within 1 year's time, actually maybe even a little less than 1 year's time, that we were able to get 3,100 people, and the numbers growing daily, so that is good stuff. So I think one of the most beneficial parts of an event like the conference is the opportunity to meet and speak to others like yourself who are working on the front lines. Were you able to pick up any tips or ideas that you were interested in trying back at your organization there at South Central PA Sickle Cell Council?
Right. Yes. Well, certainly, there's some things that they were doing that I wasn't aware of. Like I said, this National Patient Network. I also understand there's I guess we had one presentation that talked about counseling for one of the things they offer is counseling for new mothers. provide counseling for new mothers, and they call it baby love, you know.
Right.
And it was parental counseling. I thought, that's interesting, you know. When I think of, and the reason I mention that is because that was brought up in the context of there's some additional funding out there, but we have to be creative in the way we go after it. So if we would develop a program that would explain to our parents how to nurture and care for their children, that there's funding out there that funds people who have children who don't necessarily have any diseases, but they still fund parents on proper care and parenting skills. We can certainly apply for those kinds of funds as well, even though we're serving a population with an incurable disease. So that was something I had never considered.
Okay.
As a funding source, someone who provides that kind of funding to help parents in terms of just ensuring the stability of families through proper parenting skills. We certainly have a plethora of parents that we could run through that same kind of a curriculum, if you will. So why shouldn't we apply for that kind of grant funding, you know, to augment our own resources?
Mm-hmm.
So that was interesting to me.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, because I go there obviously wanting to hear about the potential new breakthroughs for treatment, like they're talking about, the bone marrow transplants and the need to have a proper match in order for that bone marrow transplant to be successful. And of course, the ideal match would be for a sibling
right.
to donate bone marrow. But short of that, the next tier level, you'd look for an African American at least
right.
to donate blood. And so that was interesting to hear them talk about the need, obviously, for more African Americans to sign up and to be the match registry, because you never know whose life you can save. And they explain pretty much the process of donating bone marrow is pretty non-threatening. And so I think more people, if they realized what it took, they might register if they realize it wasn't as invasive or as threatening or overwhelming as they might think. You know, it's no more difficult than someone giving blood. Actually, you know, it's no more involved than that. And so I think if people would even consider that, we'd have more African Americans in a database, thereby enhancing the opportunity for our clients to be candidates for transplants.
Yeah.
So that's basically something that I can get out of that huge interest in. It's getting more and more people in the registry.
Yeah, I think that we have to do a much better job of trying to recruit African Americans to give bone marrow. And you said it very, very well. It really isn't any more complex or any more dangerous than just going to the Red Cross and donating blood.
Exactly.
And so, you know, we really need people to think about that and think about the fact that they can save lives. And a couple of weeks ago, I actually had an interview with a young lady named Camilla Quinn, who lives in Gary, Indiana. She's in her mid-30s, and she had a successful bone marrow transplant 3 years ago. And it was absolutely wonderful speaking with her, and she wants to get out and do some advocacy work on behalf of sickle cell, but to let people know that, you know, giving that marrow can make a huge difference, because Joe, she told me, you're living without sickle cell, after living with sickle cell for over 30 years, she said you just wouldn't believe how much better life is. And I mean, think about the difference we can make to someone who currently has sickle cell and can be cured. That's doing a service to humanity, and all it takes is just like going to give blood. So good, well said. I'm glad you brought that up, Joe.
That's funny. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, and so I'm going to kind of change directions here, and because you're somebody I admire your dedication, and I always like to pick people's minds, particularly when I admire their dedication. So in this case, let me ask you, if I gave you the chance to get on CNN, what would you tell people? What would you tell them about sickle cell?
I would tell them that this is a disease that universally curable, and that there are a lot of courageous people who are valiantly living with this disease and are deserving of an opportunity to live a pain-free life. And that I believe this country has the resources to bring that to bear. We just have to acquire the will to make that happen. That's what I would tell them.
You said that so well. You said that so well. Thank you. That we have the resources, and we can reward people who have been living valiantly and fighting valiantly.
That's right.
You said that so well. Thanks for that. So as someone who has a great deal of experience in the sickle cell field, what would you say are the top 3 issues that sickle cell faces right now?
Okay. Well, obviously, one of my challenges, and you alluded to it earlier, aside from not having a cure, we know that. I don't want to belabor it, but we know it doesn't have a cure. We know that inadequate funding is being given to it. So certainly those are challenges. But I think also enhancing, increasing public awareness about the preponderance of this disease. So many times I've had people say to me, I don't hear much about sickle cell anymore. I thought that was cured already because I never hear about it anymore. And so that to me is we've got I don't call it an image problem, but we've got a visibility problem. And that is real crucial, I believe, to us getting the attention and the funding that we ultimately need. We've got to overcome this perception, this forgotten disease that somehow or another sickle cell has been, cured and mitigated, and is no longer a crisis, but it really is. And so that's one of the number one challenges for me, as I see it, is we've got to overcome that notion that sickle cell is no longer a prevalent issue in the lives of people who live with it. So that to me is a biggie, Gary.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And I think it's going to continue to be one. I have encountered the same kind of thing, and why don't I hear about sickle cell anymore? And I really kind of have to break it down and say, number one, those that are working in the field have limited resources to work with. I really don't have a large advertising budget. You probably don't either, and most of the other CBOs probably don't either. And anymore, and I've actually educated people about this. That everybody said, well, what about public service announcement? I'm like, they don't do those so much anymore, at least not in this market. And it's like, if you want to get your word out, they'll be happy to work with you as long as you're paying advertising rates. So, we don't have an advertising budget that can sustain the message that needs to be out there so people can say, oh yeah, I hear about it all the time. In order to do that, you're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars in advertising, and we don't have it. So that's one of our big problems, and I don't know how we get around it. Yes.
If I may, let me just add to that. We have a local station here, IWHB 580, a CBS affiliate station here, and they do run a PSA spot for us.
Okay.
In fact, us, they allow every nonprofit, any nonprofit that desires of developing a spot that they can run periodically when they have some airtime. And so I recorded a spot, but I tell you, when it runs, I'm long gone to bed.
right, and most everybody else has too, right? Yeah.
Right. I do appreciate that it's run for those people who have perhaps worked second shift and are just getting off work, and maybe they get to hear it. I do appreciate that. but the most of the people don't hear it. It's not certainly not doing your morning and evening drive time.
Absolutely. So it really is going to take more word of mouth and more grassroots effort. That's really what I'm getting at. So what would you say are the things that give you the most hope right now about sickle cell, Joe?
Well, I tell you, the fact that I think coming out of the conference, I left the conference, first of all, feeling that the people involved in this fight are just as committed as they've ever been. And in fact, I sense some renewed
agree with you 100%, and it's kind of like you're giving a teaser, Joe. At the end of every show, I do some closing statement, and my closing statement's going to touch on just what you just said. So you just gave a teaser for the closing statement. I know you got to run because you got another meeting. I know you got a meeting that you got to go to, but I'm going to ask you one or two more questions, and the next one is. How can any of our listeners that might be in your service area get in touch with you? Those people we're talking about that are out there that you don't know who they are, how can they get in touch with you if they just happen to be listening to our show today? What's your phone number? What's your website address? And do you have a social media presence? That kind of stuff.
Sure. Our phone number, first of all, is here in the Pennsylvania Harrisburg area, 717 area code, and the number is 234-3358. Is our phone number, 717-234-3358, and our email address, for those who have access to email, not everyone does, but for those who do it, www.scc.org, and that stands for South Central PA as in Pennsylvania, Sickle Cell Council, SCDAA.org is our website. We do have Facebook. You can find us on Facebook as well, the South Central PA Sickle Cell Council. But I hope that this is up by our office and sitting with our social worker and getting to know us. For those who are in this area, we're at 2000 Lingelstown Road, Suite 103 in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So someone would reach out to us. I hope they're listening and will consider reaching out to us.
Joe, is there anything else that you'd like to add? Something we didn't cover, and it's your opportunity to talk to the world.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. And hello, world. Please, world, just join us in this fight. Please. Gary is doing his part, and I certainly commend him for investing his time and resources to do this. There's just not enough vehicles out there for us to give credence to this very, very, very important malady that people are living with. So the fact that Gary's doing this, we certainly commend him and commend you, his listeners, for dialing in to hear what's transpiring with those who are living with this disease. So I just ask you to continue to make yourselves a committee of one and say that I'm going to tell somebody about sickle cell disease and do my part to direct someone in the right direction. And please, above all, consider becoming a bone marrow donor because you never know whose life you're going to save. So, Gary, thank you so much for having me on, man. Really mean that.
Well, Joe, I really mean this too, and thank you so much for agreeing to give us your time today. You're a busy guy, and you did tell me that you had another meeting, and because you're involved in your community, and we appreciate your involvement in the community as well. But thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for the work you're doing, and thank you for bringing up some very good points in our show today. So I'm looking forward to working with you as we go forward, and I'm looking forward to speaking with you again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, my friend. You be blessed and be encouraged.
Same to you. Have a good night.
Bye.
Hi, I'm Gary A. Gibson, your host for the Sickle Cell Action Network Internet Radio Show. If you are impacted by sickle cell disease in any way, whether you are a patient, a caregiver, or a friend, you need to join me every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I promise that you will find our show to be full of information, perspective, and opinion about all things sickle cell. See you Tuesday right here on RadioNext.tv, the Cool Groove site. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Sickle Cell Action Network Internet Radio Show. I'm Gary A. Gibson, your host, and I'm pleased to continue our discussion about the recent 44th Annual Sickle Cell Disease of America Convention in Baltimore, Maryland. And we're going to now speak to another participant that was there, and an outstanding lady herself, outstanding because she is doing something about sickle cell, and she is the executive director of the Sickle Cell Association that is based in St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm speaking about none other than Ms. Rosemary Britts. I would like to thank you, Rosemary, for taking the time to be on the show with us today, and first of all, welcome.
Thank you, Gary.
So, Rosemary, I always ask our guests to tell us a little bit about themselves, just so people can get to know you a little bit better. So go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself. Where were you born, and how long have you been serving in your current role?
Sure. So I'm from St. Louis. I was born in a city right here near St. Louis, and I've lived here pretty much all of my life. I'm a married mother of 5 children from age 6 to 26, and I've been in my current role since the beginning of the organization. I'm the founder of the Sickle Cell Association, and we started in 2011.
Okay, so you're the founder, and that also makes you an amazing person, because not everybody can found an organization and make it work, and so you're doing that, and you're to be congratulated for recognizing a need in your community and responding to that need. Somebody that didn't just talk about it, but somebody that actually went out and did something about that, and I admire that very much. So you said you were founded in 2011, and so you are located in St. Louis, right?
Yes, we're located in St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay, and so what motivated you to start the Sickle Cell Association?
Sure. So I have a 26-year-old daughter that's living with sickle cell disease, SS, and so I knew firsthand what the parents were dealing with that had children living with sickle cell disease, and then the patients themselves. And we did not have an organization in the area at that time that was doing anything for sickle cell. So short of you going to the clinic or, the sickle cell clinic or the doctor, there was no other support that was specific for sickle cell. And so I just, I felt the need, and I kept pushing away from it, though, because I didn't know how I was going to get there and what it was going to look like. But I was struck to just jump out there on faith, and so I jumped out with both feet, and here I am.
I find it amazing that in a city like St. Louis, that up until 2011 there was no organization for people with sickle cell. How many people are estimated to have sickle cell in your area?
So in the area we have about 700 that are being attended to by the sickle cell clinics here in our area. They estimate that there's a total of about 1,200 in the state of Missouri, and so there's quite a few, I would say, for our area. And we have had some organizations that come and go, but as you know, with funding and things like that, it's just difficult to make those stay around. And so without the resources, it's just not something that any individual can maintain.
Yeah, we'll talk about those resources in a minute, and I'm struck because the numbers, the statistics that you just gave are very similar to the way it is here in Indiana. They estimate that there's around 600 people with sickle cell in Indianapolis and about 1,200 in the entire state. So pretty similar, but it's fascinating that it wasn't until 2011 that you had an organization. I know you said there were some before, but the fact that there was any period without that's just kind of fascinating to me. So what is your coverage area? You've got patient clients that you're working with from wherever. I mean, tell us a little bit about your coverage area, and has that always been the same since you started, or has it expanded, whatnot? Can you give us some information on that?
Yeah, so we actually service the St. Louis metropolitan area as far as where most of our clients come from, and that includes portions of Illinois. And we've had some individuals to contact us for assistance as far up as Kansas City. And so we, just kind of help help everyone in terms of our coverage with trying to assist with getting individuals into the patient registry for sickle cell. We service a 4-state region, and that would be Missouri, Kansas, Iowa, and Nebraska, and that's because there's no other sickle cell organization within those 4 states.
Right. So what kind of services do you provide?
So we offer support group meetings. We have counseling services. We offer some financial assistance, and then we just do general. If you need someone to come visit you or pray with you at the hospital, we will do that as well.
Okay, and about how many clients do you have?
So currently we have about 50 that are ongoing in terms of our services, participating in everything. I have to say that we've helped numerous people over the years so far, but up until now we did not have a case management system in order to follow people.
Okay.
And we do have that now, which is helping us to better follow the individuals that we're assisting.
Right, and I would think that because you've only been in existence since 2011, your numbers are going to continue to grow as people become familiar with you. Are you seeing that happening?
That is correct. We're, day by day getting more and more individuals that we're connecting with and are becoming a part of the community that we've created. And I believe that is going to continue because word of mouth has just kind of blown things up. And then even our support group meetings are starting to grow. And we can see that from month to month. One person will bring someone else or tell someone else, and so those are even starting to grow.
Right. So what about the demographics, Rosemary? Do you have any patients that aren't of African heritage?
No, not at this time.
Okay.
We do know that there are some in the community, but at this time we have not been in connection with them or servicing them.
And then of your clients, what about the age ranges?
I would say we have newborn, so we have probably 6 months up to age 70.
Awesome. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you mentioned funding. Let's talk about that a little bit. I think most of the people that we serve don't realize how difficult it is for us to find funding to be able to offer services to them.
Right.
What are your thoughts about the challenges that organizations like ours face when it comes to finding support for our efforts?
So my thought is that sickle cell disease is a very dreadful, painful disease. And although it's been thought of as a black disease, this is a disease that's in our community. And as long as it's in the community, it should be everyone's concern. So it shouldn't be that, that's that black disease or that doesn't affect me or my family. It's in our community. Someone is suffering with it. And so, therefore, if we begin to look at it in those terms, then everyone should start to pitch in. And so we should have the same opportunities as funding and resources as any other disease state.
And we don't. And we don't.
Right.
So, do you think it's become any more difficult, or has it become a little easier since you started the organization 5 years ago?
I believe that it's become easier.
Okay.
And I think back some years ago when, when sickle cell started to come on the radar, people actually said, you need to get tested and this and that. And then somehow the AIDS and HIV and all that kind of came in there and suppressed anyone's thoughts about what was going on with sickle cell. Well, I believe that is now on the incline again in terms of awareness and people needing to be
Right, yeah,
totally, but
right.
it's becoming easier.
I think you might be right, and I before you, I was speaking with Joe Robinson from Pennsylvania earlier, and I asked him the same question, and he said he thought it was getting a little easier too, but he attributed that to the fact that he's getting better at finding the sources of money. That's great. I want to go ahead and change the subject from funding to last week's convention and talk to you a little bit about that. You were there, and what were your impressions about last week's convention?
I thought that the convention went great. And I've been there, the past few years, and brought clients, families, adult patients, and they've all enjoyed it. For me, it tends to end up being an overload of information every time. So I have to bring those other individuals, and we kind of try to divide and conquer in terms of, okay, you go to these sessions, I go to these sessions, you go to those sessions, and then we kind of come back together and convene when we get back to St. Louis and just talk about what all we learned. But it's definitely a lot of information, great information. You learn something just when you think you have it all, you learn something new. So I think that it went very well.
I went through the program booklet and I counted up all of the different sessions, and I counted over 80 different sessions over that 4 days. So you're right, there was a whole lot of information covered, and it's pretty hard to catch it all unless you divide it up, divide and conquer, like you said.
Right.
So if you could pick 3 things about the conference that stood out in your mind, what would they be?
I don't know. I was kind of partial to the community-based, the focus of community-based organizations and those programs, and us being able to share what the individuals are doing, the individual organizations are doing. So I really like that. And otherwise, I guess talking about the treatment and hearing from the heads of the pharmaceutical companies and what they're doing and what they're trying to do in order to move things forward for treatment and a cure.
Okay. And I think one of the most beneficial parts of an event like that conference is the opportunity to meet and speak with others that are working with the same mission that we are. Yeah, and so do you think, were you able to pick up any tips or ideas that you're interested in trying back there in St. Louis?
Well, I one of the things that I really liked was because we're trying to work on this registry, I liked the T-shirts that Birmingham had. And although simple, I thought, okay, something that says I'm connected, and you can give that out to individuals that actually get on the registry. I really liked that. I thought that was just, I don't know, it was simple, but it was really nice.
You're right.
But yeah, I took various notes, and I'm excited to sit down with my team and see what we can implement.
I thought one of the highlights was what they did with the ropes, and for people really needed to be in the room to be able to see it, but they handed out little strips of ropes and then had everybody tie their ropes together and become connected, and it was very, very powerful indeed.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, it was.
Yes, it was on different levels, but I think that helped people to understand, the importance of the registry and being locked in, being connected, a part of that.
Yeah.
So, I think that was very powerful, and that particular speaker from Birmingham, she always brings it with something, new ideas or something like that. So I really like that.
Yeah, it was awesome. So I'm going to change direction again, and I'm going to say you have a golden opportunity. You're going to get interviewed on NBC News about sickle cell. What are you going to say?
I'm going to say that I need people to understand what this pain is like.
that's pretty well said about the pain that most people, they don't have a clue about what it feels like, and thank you for sharing that. As someone who's had so much experience with sickle cell, raising a child with it and whatnot, and now working with individuals that are living with sickle cell, what would you say are the top issues that sickle cell faces in our world today?
I'm sorry, can you said?
Yeah, I said, what are the top issues that you see facing sickle cell today?
Well, I think the care or the lack thereof that is available, or in our area, like our emergency room care, it's horrible. I mean, it's just really just pitiful. And so I believe that is one of the main things, is the lack of care and compassion for individuals that are living with this disease. And then further, to understand that there are things that have been documented that we know of in regard to sickle cell trait, and that information is not very well put out. And so it's not until something happens, meaning that a young athlete has dropped dead, or someone has gotten this kidney cancer, and they find out, oh yeah, that's something we've been watching in terms of sickle cell trait, but you didn't find that out until it was too late. So those are some of the issues that I feel are pretty concerning.
I agree with you. I think it's time, excuse me, I think it's time that we do put more emphasis on understanding trait. You mentioned athletes encountering death and issues like that, and I actually just saw a story today of another recent event where an athlete with sickle cell passed away suddenly from exertion. And so he had sickle cell trait, and I think we need to understand that, and we don't know enough about that. So I agree with you. So what are the things that bring you the most hope, Rosemary, as you look down the road?
Well, I think that the fact that people are getting more on board and trying to plug in and give their what they have to offer. So here in St. Louis, we have something that's called the Community Sickle Cell Initiative, CSCI for short, and that is a group of individuals that have come together from the American Red Cross, the Integrated Health Network, the United Way, American Red Cross, Pfizer, and the Sickle Cell Association, and then someone from the university. And we come together and meet on a regular basis to talk about what are the issues at hand and what are we going to do to work on tackling them from right here where we are. And everyone has a strength that they can offer. There's something that someone has to offer. We're all stakeholders, but we come from a different position in this. But when we bring that together, it's a powerful thing. And so I believe the fact that people are coming together in the name of sickle cell, I think that is bringing hope. And I think that's the big thing for me.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing that. We're about out of time. We definitely thank you for taking your time to be with us today, Rosemary. How many other people are involved with your organization at this point in terms of supporting your efforts?
As far as employees, I have a community health worker and I have a care coordinator.
Okay.
And then we use various volunteers. But that's pretty much what gets it done. But I've only gotten the others this past year. Up until that point, I had been on my own outside of anybody that I can just kind of pull in and say,
Absolutely. Thank you for your dedication. When you're out there by yourself doing it like you are, that's dedicated. So how can any listeners that might be in the St. Louis area, that might be listening to the show and they don't know about you or they haven't been in touch with you yet, how can they get in touch with you? Why don't you share your phone number and your website address and any other information that's helpful for people to find you?
Sure. So our website is sicklecellassociation.org, and we can be reached by phone at 314-833-6751.
And are you on social media?
Yes, we are. We're on Facebook and Twitter at Sickle Cell ASSOC.
Okay. Rosemary Britts, is there anything else that you'd like to add while you have this opportunity?
No, I just thank you so much for the opportunity and to even think about me in talking on your show. So thank you very much.
Thank you for the work you're doing to try to help people living with sickle cell. We appreciate it very much. We appreciate the fact that you took your time to be here with us today, and looking forward to working with you as we go down the road as we continue this battle against sickle cell disease. Rosemary Britts from St. Louis, the Sickle Cell Association, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take one last break, and then when we return, we'll close out our show. This is the Sickle Cell Action Network Internet Radio Show, and I am Gary A. Gibson, your host. Welcome back to the Sickle Cell Action Network Internet Radio Show, and I'm Gary A. Gibson, your host, and it's been a pleasure today to talk to people that were involved in the Sickle Cell Disease Association of America conference. I'm disappointed that we were not able to actually connect with Sonja Banks, the president and CEO of Sickle Cell Disease Association of America, but maybe we'll have the opportunity to get on another time. I do want to also clarify that what I referenced earlier, that we're going to start going to a bi-weekly format, but basically what I'm trying to say is that our live shows will be bi-weekly, and we will on alternate Tuesdays be playing replays of previous shows. So that will help us make sure that there is programming with the Sickle Cell Action Network Internet Radio Show every Tuesday, but every other Tuesday will be live, and that will be starting on October 18th. Same time, same location, just a slight change in how we do the programming. So it is time now to close the show, and I'm really delighted to be able to have the opportunity to go back and make reference to something our previous guest, Mr. Joe Robinson Jr., said. And he was talking about the spirit and the excitement, the enthusiasm that exists within the sickle cell community, particularly when you're at a convention like the one last week. And so I'm going to start by the quote, as I typically do. And this time I'm giving credit to Hillary Rodham Clinton for a quote that I think is appropriate. And it says, "It is often when night looks darkest, it is often before the fever breaks that one senses the gathering momentum for change, when one feels that resurrection of hope in the midst of despair and apathy." Of course, Hillary Rodham Clinton is an American politician and the nominee of the Democratic Party for President of the United States in this 2016 election. She has served as a United States Senator, the First Lady of the United States, and the First Lady of the state of Arkansas. Dictionary.com says that momentum is a force or speed of movement, impetus as of a physical object or course of events. After being involved with sickle cell disease for 4 decades, I must say that I have never seen this much momentum in our cause. In recent shows, I've spoken about the many positive things that are happening in the sickle cell universe, but I have to tell you, it's worth talking about some more. Recently, we've learned that the American Society of Hematology has started a global coalition to improve sickle cell care. And now, just last week, we learned that President Obama signed the Advancing Hope Act. Why is that good news for sickle cell? Let me lay it out for you. It's good because that law now makes sickle cell disease eligible for a priority review voucher from the Food and Drug Administration. Effectively, this means that more drug developers will be more motivated to work on bringing new treatments to market. The less time that it takes to get FDA approval, the less investment will be required. And I think that this development is just one more example of the ever-increasing momentum in the sickle cell space. But there are so many other examples as well. At last week's Sickle Cell Disease Association of America convention, over 400 people came together as a unified team to learn and find even more new ways to battle sickle cell. I can't tell you how good it feels to be a part of something like that. There are so many passionate people dedicating so many selfless hours to our cause that you can't help but recognize what is happening. You recognize it because you can actually feel the power of this collective momentum. One evening, after all of the conference sessions for the day were finished, I started thinking more about this. I came to the realization that we may have arrived at a point known as critical mass. The primary definition of critical mass is the amount of a given fissionable material necessary to sustain a chain reaction at a constant rate. In other words, once the chain reaction gets started, it is very, very difficult to stop it and shut it down. Think of it this way. I once lived near a railroad junction. Sometimes the trains had to stop there and wait before they could continue on their journey. Once the trains were cleared to leave, they labored to get up to speed. Eventually, after a few minutes of chugging along, they would finally reach their cruising speeds. Now, some of those trains were literally over a mile long and weighed as much as 10,000 tons or more. That tonnage is their mass. That mass is what makes it very, very hard for them to stop quickly. In fact, it may take as many as 18 football fields for a train traveling at 55 miles per hour to come to a complete stop. The heavier the train, the harder it is to stop it. We all know that a train in motion is hard to stop, and if it has enough mass, the harder it is to stop. A train traveling at 55 miles an hour with 10,000 tons or more of mass can easily plow through a 10-foot brick wall. That's the power of momentum, and that is what is building in the sickle cell universe right now. And if our momentum has really taken us to a point of critical mass, I can only say, these are exciting times indeed. That's our show for today. Please join us again next week, same time, same station.